No, I'll be going out the door in a little bit.
Okay. All right. Hi, my name is Vickie Bonowitz, and I'm just starting this up, so it's all going to be a big learning curve to start off with. But I'm definitely not a medical expert. I'm not a doctor, so I wanted to take some people along on my journey as I learn about health and some things that have helped myself as well as my daughter, and some things that we're doing that you might find helpful as well. But you'll want to check things out for yourself, do your own research on it before you make any choices, and if needed, make sure you talk to your doctor about it, of course. Now, just some of the things that we've made changes in our life in the last since basically 2017, and actually 2016. Went to a doctor who made recommendations that my daughter give up processed foods, which we weren't doing a whole lot of at that time. But we just became a lot more vigilant about giving up processed foods. And then we also, he made recommendations for us giving up things like sugar, soy, what else? Corn and gluten and dairy. So, just something interesting that happened as I did the diet along with my daughter is found out that my symptoms of I no longer had to take any thyroid medicine when I gave those things up. Very religiously stopped using those things. So that was an interesting thing that happened at that time. Since then, now and then, I will cheat, and so that's so it lasted about 3 years when I just was religious with leaving those things off, that I did not have to take thyroid medicine. So that was an interesting finding. Okay, but I keep looking down because the dogs are wanting to get really close to me. I've got 3 dogs, and at some point they're going to bark and be really loud. But so that's one of the first things that happened along our journey. And the reason that we made those changes is found out at that point we knew something was wrong and it wasn't being addressed. My daughter had been diagnosed with bipolar, and we knew something was being missed. So eventually, 2017, I came across Pandas Network when we were both of us homesick with strep throat. And she had already gone through 1 round of antibiotics and still was testing positive for strep. So then I just started, I guess I really think it was God, but I felt just impressed that we needed to check to try to find something. So I remembered that when she had to be hospitalized once, that the doctor had said something about the connection with mental illness. And at that time, it was just beginning to do studies on the connection with strep and mental illness. And I looked into it as hard as I could at that time, but I know now that the reason I couldn't find much out about it is it was a 10-year study, and it was just beginning. I believe it was 10 years. I may be off some on the time frame for that, but it was a long study. But by the time I went back to look at it again in 2016 or 17, that's when I found Pandas Network and the conferences. I watched several of those, and that's when I found out this. I just knew this is exactly what we've been dealing with. And it was the first time that I heard someone else's story sound like ours, where she started losing skills, regressions, memory problems, OCD, psychosis, different things that just made no sense. So at that time, when I looked into that and found out that actually what happens with pandas, just a short, brief explanation of that, is that it's called mimicry, which basically, this is a very crude explanation, but the strep can have a defensive move where it can cloak itself to look like a protein in your body, and it could be the protein that looks like your heart or your brain or other tissues in your body. But hers was her brain, and so strep can kind of camouflage itself to look like brain, so that when the body goes to attack the strep, it attacks the brain. So that's what was happening to her all along. Anytime she had exposure to strep, then she was getting an attack on her brain. And so that's why we were seeing the up and down, that it had a lot of symptoms that resemble bipolar as far as, but it just didn't line up, and there was no trauma really going on or anything that made this make sense. So, and it just didn't follow any pattern. I mean, people say, if you stay on your meds, well, that was never the case. It didn't matter, meds or not, there was still this going on. It just didn't seem to make a lot of difference other than numbing and slowing down her thinking. So anyhow, so I saw that, and I called the Pandas Network, and I spoke to the founder of the Pandas Network. First left a message. She called me back, spoke to me. She told me what tests to have my primary care physician to, run, and to check on her titers. So we did those and found out that her titers were staying elevated. And something that's interesting for the people who tend to have this, they don't have a lot of the same symptoms. So you don't necessarily know you're having strep with these people. We used to think of it as someone being a carrier of strep, but you're only just a carrier if it's not impacting your health. So it was, devastatingly impacting her health. So it was more than that, by far. So when we found that out, I asked her what we needed to do. When we found out her titers were staying up and not coming down, and like she wouldn't run fevers, she didn't necessarily have a sore throat. And that's what the fever response often goes away with a lot of these people and kids or young adults. And so what we did, she told me that there was one doctor that, because this is pediatrics, is what this is usually, it had started happening when she was young, but we didn't find out for over 20 years what was really going on. So she recommended a doctor that she knew that would take adults that were dealing with this. So we were sent to a doctor, Elizabeth Latimer, who we set up an appointment. It took, several months to get in. And she's a specialist in Washington, D.C. that deals with patients that have pandas. So, and then we went there, and it was very involved as far as I had to gather all of her records, and I got to look for patterns of when she was tested for strep, when she, showed that she did have it, when she didn't have it. That's the main thing I remember as far as that, is just looking for strep tests. And then just her titers too, and anything else that was that might be, of interest as far as to the doctor. She had a few things that she asked for. Can't really recall the details of that. But it was quite a bunch of papers. So went through all of her records and put that together and went to the appointment, which, it's all these assessment sheets on, that were, from various universities on looking at OCD, looking at anxiety. And then she spent an hour going over her history as a child and symptoms and what we were dealing with. Then she went through a neurological exam, and she had been over in the past, Georgetown's adolescent or pediatric or adolescent neurology unit. So, she was somebody and then quite a reputation. So she was impressive. So went through that first with her physician's assistant, and then she did the exam. Dr. Latimer did. Then she went and reviewed everything with us herself. So this was like over 2 hours. And during that time, when she got through, she said she has Sydenham's chorea. Didn't even know what that was. And she has rheumatic fever. Didn't really know what that was. But rheumatic fever is just what I was talking about. It's that mimicry happening. And I found out there's just a small population, 5% or less. It's between 2 and 5% of the population in the world is susceptible to rheumatic fever. And that's why when you get strep, that people get an antibiotic. It's just so this doesn't happen. But for those people who don't have symptoms, then they don't know that they even need to. And how we often found out she even did have strep is when I would have symptoms, or my son would, and then we would go and have her tested with us just because, exposure we knew was likely. But she told us, explained that Sydenham's chorea is a complication of rheumatic fever. And it is kind of like a step up from PANDAS, and the studies and the even discovery of PANDAS, pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorder associated with strep, is what the acronym is, PANDAS, that came about from that study that the doctor had made reference once at the hospital when she was 12, so that lost my train for a second. So anyhow, that pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorder is what they looked at Sydenham's chorea, which they've known about since, I don't know, it was like 1700s or earlier, like a long time ago. Okay. They knew that could happen, which that's associated with more of trunk movements, which it could be shoulders, trunks that are involved with that. So there's some neurological stuff going on. And other things they sometimes check for is something called piano fingers, where if they close their eyes, they can't hold their fingers still. They'll have to move them. That's kind of one of the other things that's kind of telling as far as with PANDAS or with Sydenham's chorea. But it's also called what is it called? Saint something's dance. I can't remember the terminology there, but it has to do with more trunk movement involved with it. And all of this comes about because the part of the brain that's being attacked is your basal ganglia, which is more, it's kind of deeper. And because it's deeper inside, what happens is as that's attacked, it swells. And when it swells, then what would happen is it would impact different parts of the brain, which have to do with memory, with organizations, with OCD, with what else? Trying to think some other things. Oh, math is impacted with it, math skills. So short-term memory, math skills, spatial relationship, emotions. So that's why it can look so much like what they'd say is bipolar, which when you get down to it, bipolar is just a symptom of something else going on. They may not know what it is, or it could actually be something that they can trace from an antibody that's attacking a brain, like what we were dealing with and didn't know it for so long. But anyhow, so that's how we ended up going into the whole business with the diet and making some changes there. So that's kind of just a beginning with our story and why we've become so heavily involved in looking for ways to build health. So kind of long drawn out explanation, but that's kind of what set us off on this journey that of just being very, very focused on health. Just give a real brief overview in that we've seen things go from severe dementia-like symptoms because the delay in diagnosis to short-term memory going from almost non-existent to coming back really strong. She reminds me of things now. And seeing expressive aphasia, which means can understand things, but having problems processing, getting them out, which has a lot of kind of autistic-like characteristics about that too. But seeing that in halted speech within the first 4 hours of treatment, even less, I think it was first 2 hours of treatment, we saw her going from halted speech to fluent, which was pretty miraculous. And being able to not be able to put 2 sentences out in a row to talking, just chatting away. So we've seen miraculous improvements with medication, IVIG, and which are antibodies of like 7,000 to 10,000 people, to all the way to and steroids they also give with that. So that was definitely something that's had a big impact on helping her regain her health, because that flushes out the antibodies that you need to get rid of that are attacking the brain, and then it boosts up the immune system as well. And then she also has taken Rituxan, which that is one that's it's an older medicine. You can wait on that, Casey. Okay, it's also something that's been used to it suppresses the immune system so that it's not replicating the antibodies you don't want to. It kind of is like rebooting, like you do on your computer. If something's not going right on it and you need to correct it, you can turn it off sometimes, turn it back on, and it will reset it. That's the point of Rituxan, which we saw her going from, she was like intermediate to advanced as far as some piano, but when she got so sick the first time, and when it really came full blown, and she couldn't do anything on the piano. And then after rituximab, we have some videos of where she's just playing pieces fluently. The thing with that didn't hold, which the doctor did tell us that what you see with this, especially when there's a delay, that you're going to see things get better and then they start going down, then treatment again get better. But the thing is with that, the slowly gradual improvement, which that's exactly what we've seen. So she's still getting treatments. Now we went for 2.5 years to Washington, D.C. every 6 to 10 months for treatments at first. And then once we finally were able to have Vanderbilt take over, which that's a whole ordeal in and of itself, what was required for that to happen. And not that they didn't want to, but they basically, if we couldn't get coverage, insurance coverage, they didn't feel like it's something that they'd be able to do. Once we were able to get that, then they were able to take over, and they took over the case. So we've seen her go just from non-functioning, needing help with everything, to a lot more independent, still needing prompting and helping with a lot of things, and working on building back her health. But so we've seen some miraculous things happening. So anyhow, that's just that's what's put us on this journey. And so I've been researching for the last, since she was 12 and she's now 39. So on ways to address mental health, physical health, because of our belief system. I believe spiritual health is of utmost importance, and just all different kind of modalities that might make a difference. And a lot of times it's just nudging things in the right direction, and through diet, through supplements, through lifestyle changes, sunlight, all kinds of things. So we try to do it all. And I'm her caregiver, so that's what a lot of my time is spent doing. So I cook like 4 times a day, 3 or 4 times a day, for her to eat what she needs to eat, and be able to take her medications and supplements that she needs. So that's it's going to be a lot with diet. It's going to be a lot with supplementation, a lot with research, which I've got a lot of folks that I've been following since I've been looking into this. Like I said, no doctor, myself, no health expert. So anything that you choose to do, you'll want to check it out yourself and make those choices. But I hope you come along on this journey with me. And as I help get her to get healthier and stronger, and work to get healthier myself. You have a great day. Thanks.